Charles, the movie that we've selected today has the unique distinction. I've never seen it.
Really?
Well, it's interesting. I've tried to watch it 3 times.
Uh-huh. And it was so bad?
I don't know if it was good or bad. Something about it, it is, what's the word I'm looking for? Soporific? I fall asleep every time. Is that the right word?
That is.
See, high school worked.
Right, you busted on well on the SATs.
I actually did do well on the SATs.
Sure you did.
Now, Charles, we're back in Madison Square Park. This is a nice spot.
It is.
In the summertime.
In fact, we've been here quite a few times, but we were here about a year ago, this time or thereabouts, and it was very different. Not as very sparse, if you remember, even 12 months ago.
But you know what's significant about today, Charles?
No mask day.
Correct. Governor Stupid, Cuomo, or was it de Blasio, one of those dopes have said that you no longer need to wear a mask, so we can kind of like get an idea of how many people are so super brainwashed. There's all these articles coming out now by people who are saying like, oh, well, you know, I like wearing the mask, I'm going to keep wearing the mask.
It's like, well, yeah, I mean, we were supposed to follow the science when they say lock it down, wear a mask.
Yes.
And then when the scientists say don't wear a mask, you don't follow the science.
You're going to question that, right?
Yeah, it's totally logical. So before we get too far into it, we should give plaudits to the art department for
thank you.
A fantastic poster. I know that we're hard at work on that book, and the book is now going to have to be 350 pages, I think, because you've done about 350 covers.
You're right, actually. I think that would be way too expensive, though. Part of the problem with the book is trying to get it made economically, but these lawsuits are coming to a close. I don't want to speak about them too much just yet because of the risk of possibly irritating the judge, which is the last thing that I want to do, but there is so much that I've learned throughout this process, and I'm going to share that with the audience when these things are done. Charles, I don't know if people remember, but I did do the first 3 episodes of a series called Deep Inside Robert David Steele's Anti-Speech Strategy. You can still see that on patreon.com/.
Does that have any kind of like a, what's it called? You know, you put the first letters of each.
Yes. Sorry, it's actually right now only available on subscribestar.com/crowdsource-the-truth. I'm going to make it available on Patreon real soon. There's been a huge upgrade, Charles, to the Crowdsource-the-truth video server. So for people that are involved in the beta program, which is everybody who is a sponsor on Subscribestar, they're watching sponsor-exclusive videos coming from a video server that I have hired a developer to create just for the sponsor-exclusive content. And starting yesterday, because a lot of people were saying they're trying to watch on their phone and stuff, if you have a low bandwidth connection, the server will now detect the speed of your internet connection and deliver high, medium, or low bandwidth videos.
That's great.
Yeah, it was a really exciting feature that they've implemented, so that's a cool thing.
This is a beautiful scene, actually, of the park. It reminds me of, who's that artist that's not, is Manet? Manet?
No.
Manet. No, I'm thinking
Sunday
Manet.
afternoon on the island of La Grande Jatte.
Is that Manet or is that?
That's pointyism. It's Seurat.
No, I'm thinking of Manet, actually. But it is evocative of those impressionist scenes in the various French parks.
Is that a speak and spell, Charles?
A what?
Suddenly I'm choking on something.
Maybe let's move away from these plants. Perhaps
these weird plants. It looks like this kid is playing with a speak and spell. That'd old
be
toy that E.T. used to phone home.
That would be a retro toy for sure.
Wow.
You
What
okay?
just happened to my voice?
You want to get some water or something?
That's all right. What would you like to discuss today, Charles?
Well, Joe Biden continues on his quest to become, in a short period of time, let's go that way. In a short period of time, the most ineffective, feckless buffoon ever to operate.
An electric F-150?
Yeah.
He's definitely got that distinction.
Inside the confines of the Oval Office when he deigns to show up, when he isn't taking a lid. I don't know if you heard what he did before the Coast Guard just now.
Well, he said they weren't paying attention or something, or he made fun of them?
Well, he delivered a line that apparently was lifted from somebody else's speech and nobody laughed. And so he said, God, this is a dull class.
Yeah.
Come on, man. I mean.
But then they laughed.
At him.
I guess out of kind of uncomfortable.
And again, if you were to take you or me, who have no political experience, and ask us to pretend that we legitimately won the 2020 presidential election and were legitimately running the country, we could probably pretend that we were doing that. And whether we got away with it or didn't would be a function of whether the corporate-owned media decided to clean our clocks and shoot us at the wrong angles and unflattering this and that, and weave together the type of Steele dossier bullshit stories that were thrown at Trump nonstop. But in the case of Joe Biden, he doesn't have that excuse. He can't say, well, look, man, I have no experience in Washington. When he was up there a while back, he said, I've been at this since I came to the Senate 180 years ago. Right? So let's say he wasn't there 180 years. Maybe time travel is possible. Maybe that's what we're going to find out.
Crack to the future.
Crack in the present. But let's see, what do you think? This side or the other side for shade? This side maybe.
Doesn't matter.
This side. And so now we're on Fifth Avenue.
Home of the Empire State Building.
Right, at home of that building that one of our loyal viewers was telling us about right here.
This is racist. White and hot.
Yeah.
The great friend for life right there.
Right?
I didn't hear what he said.
Said the great friend for life.
Oh. Well,
So-
this is out of business.
So yeah, this is that famous building, I think, or close to that famous building that was chopped up and turned into apartments. There's another few up there where they're asking absurd prices and getting them apparently for these big condos in these type of buildings. This is the this one here called.
Well,
So
there's a lot of vacancy around.
yeah. So back down on the question of Biden's performance. So he goes to the Coast Guard graduation, and he basically throws a turd in the punch bowl giving a speech. I mean, he's just One of the things I've learned attending graduations and remembering back to my own first one from college, there was a very famous Yale graduate who was featured in the Doonesbury comic strip. William Sloane Coffin, who was the chaplain or minister at Yale, and he wore anti-Vietnam protests. And he got up there. We had, I think, class day and graduation. I forget which he addressed, but it was one of the important ones. And he said, "I'm looking out across the sea of smiling faces, and I just want to start by saying, I hope this will not be the happiest day of your life."
It's a good point.
And it was an excellent point. And he went on to say this is a proud accomplishment, particularly for the parents. Grateful that the kids are now have achieved these important milestones. But may you go from strength to strength.
Charles, isn't this new? And isn't this Chinese?
It's certainly not Vietnamese. It is, I don't think, new though. So for Joe Biden to go and address, this is one of the important service academies. And the folks who go in, volunteer, and get admitted into the highly competitive Coast Guard Academy and other service academies deserve real humility and respect from their commander-in-chief. Instead, this buffoon shows up.
It's like heckling them.
He's like, Jill over here, she'd like an iced tea. Could you get her some iced tea with lemon and no ice in that?
Did he say that?
No, I'm just saying, but that's almost the way he's treating these people. And frankly, the way a lot of the recent Democrat presidents have treated people in the military service. I mean, Hillary was famous, and Valerie Jarrett and others were famous for
being mean to them, right?
not just being mean, treating highly decorated officers as if they were butlers. Which, I mean, you should treat a butler with respect as well. But anyway, so on little things, comparatively little things, he's botching almost everything that he might try. Today, do I need to let you stop here?
Just a bong store on Fifth Avenue. I mean, that's...
I can hold the camera while you...
I'm just saying that's not anything that would have ever been here before.
Yeah. So, from having created this business and other businesses, and just generally from being in the know, that in fact, it's not Fortune 500 companies that create the jobs. It's mom and pop businesses, privately owned businesses, entrepreneurs, sole proprietors, in this country anyway, they're the ones who create all the jobs in terms of numbers, because there's many more of them, obviously, than the Fortune 500 companies. And a lot of those Fortune 500 companies have put their employees outside this country. So there's talk today that Biden's on-crack economic team, economically illiterate, is introducing policies and proposed legislation that will reverse course and punish small businesses, family farms, and others by changing technical terms in estate tax, the ability to sell real estate, to swap real estate with carrying over the tax, the elimination of the step-up basis on your, when you die, your estate would get, and potentially lower the exemption on the death tax, and maybe raise the rate on the death tax, and all in the moves that this bunch of idiots is talking about putting in place should they get it through Congress is, people are saying, will make America's tax rates higher than the prohibitively high rates in China.
Really?
Yeah. Now, when you go down this jag of saying that, well, what's on Hunter Biden's laptop? How did Hunter Biden get $1 billion plus from the Chinese enterprise?
How much crack can you buy for $1 billion?
How much money has been washed through the Biden Institute and the Biden family from foreign sources, but is not yet declared as it should be?
We haven't really even looked at the Biden Foundation, have we?
Well, no, not yet. But how? It's just amazing when you start looking and seeing who benefits. Always ask the question: who benefits from these Biden policies? And in almost every, in almost every case, it's the Chinese Communist Party.
Wow.
And the Chinese government.
I noticed in Zero Hedge there was some person who came out and said that the United States has been defeated by China in a biological war.
Right, that's not just somebody, that's a pretty senior China researcher who said that in front of some meeting, and it's only now being translated and circulated. This is the expensive building that one of our viewers was wondering about. Different view, I think the last time we
I like what they've done with the facade.
Yeah, Woody Woodpecker lives here. But these buildings, one of the distinctions of them that make them very interesting for people with a lot of money is you can have, watch yourself, you can have a very large apartment with high ceilings.
I'm trying to keep you in the shot.
Okay. You can have a very large apartment here with high ceilings. Indeed, if you took a whole floor, it would be a gigantic apartment. And while this looks like, I mean, it's a technical term in real estate, dog shit right now. This area all around here with virtually every store is out.
Yeah.
You see scaffolding
on Fifth Avenue.
Everywhere. The buildings that have been fixed up here pre-pandemic have sold for very high numbers per square foot when cut up into apartments, and increasingly a bunch of the Jeff Bezos types and the tech soon-to-be trillionaires are all looking at this area and saying, this is actually, geographically speaking, pretty interesting.
Yeah, just buy the whole building and wreck it. Doesn't it look like that's what's happening across the street? Every building is
right,
kind of closed out.
Yeah. So who knows? Eventually, this area might, in theory, enjoy a renaissance. But going back to Biden's buffoonery,
yes.
It really, I used to be told by people senior to me with a lot of business experience that effecting change in a larger enterprise is like getting an aircraft carrier to turn around. It's not easy. You know, there's a certain amount of momentum that's built up in the way our large government entities are run. The bureaucracies operate in a certain way. They're unionized. To think that this moron, and he is a certifiable moron.
Yeah. Even when he was young.
Especially when he was young, has managed in less, today I guess will be today's the 19th, so it's 120 days or so. This moron has managed to plunge us into a border catastrophe in the southern border. And people will have all kinds of inside baseball arguments that it's all Trump's fault. and this and that, when the truth is, and a fair-minded analysis is, in 1920, 2019, 2020, as the primaries progressed, the folks on the left made it very clear, no matter who got to be the nominee, that we were going to change our border policy in the South. And people the coyotes and the cartels in Mexico, they looked at this, and as a guess, they were all in for eventually Biden.
Yeah.
And the second the media declared that Biden actually won, and the social media clamped down on any dissidents, these people just said, all right, let's stream towards the border.
But it's not just people from countries to the south of the United States.
I know.
I saw some report that the coyotes were charging Chinese nationals huge sums. I guess it's easy to go from China to Mexico and then sneak into the United States.
Right, and so this idea, as we think about open borders versus closed borders, yes, there is rampant inequality, economic inequality. This is old. There's rampant economic inequality globally. And that's why you do have borders. That's why, you remember that American guy who was in San Diego area?
To become a Taliban?
No, he was just I think a military guy who had a gun in his car, and he got trapped in the highway lane and found himself in Mexico with a gun in his car. And he went directly to jail, and it took many, many months to get him out.
Wow.
Because Mexico has laws that they do enforce, including laws about people sneaking into Mexico. So I'm not picking on Mexicans, but generally speaking, if you're running a country, you have a responsibility to protect your borders.
Yeah.
And that's not controversial, and it's not something that I would be prepared to enter into any kind of debate about. I mean, it's just a fact. That's one of the responsibilities. You can balance them with other ones. Then if you discover that crime, that a disproportionate number of people who are here outside the law are because they're prone to break the law, engaged in criminal activity inside our country, I would argue that politicians who don't do something about that are complicit in a criminal conspiracy to bring law, a lack of law and disorder across this great country.
Yeah, I agree with you.
You want to get one of those ponytails?
They seem to have like different, that's the United Stoners of America. They have different themes on the, I wonder if the sales representatives live in those things, their RVs.
Yeah. So this used to be over here, this used to be B. Altman's, if you remember, when you were a kid.
The B. Altman's bookstore?
B. Altman's gigantic department store.
Oh,
old-fashioned, yeah. And in 1984, thereabouts, I came around the corner and there was an upside-down taxi in flames right around the corner in the middle of the street on the weekend. Just an accident, I guess.
How did it get upside down?
Who knows? But
pretty wild.
It was reminiscent at the time. Things were rather rough in Beirut. Little did I know that I lived in Beirut, New York.
Well, speaking of that, obviously one of the biggest disasters of Joe Biden's short so far presidency is everything that's going on in the Middle East. He's sending money to both sides and mixed messages such that it's provoking violence. You know, Charles, I mean, the most upsetting thing to me, I saw this report about, Palestinian supporters or protesters or whatever they were in Los Angeles driving around in a van or a caravan or some kind of organized group, jumped out at a sushi restaurant in West Hollywood and said, "Who's Jewish?"
Right.
And some idiot said, "I am," and they beat the crap out of him. But being Jewish doesn't mean that you support the policies of Israel necessarily, and the fact that we have people who are going around just attacking people because they're Jewish,
well, nor is
that's
it
terrorism, that's racism.
Nor is it anybody's business, actually. What religion you are is up to you and God. And nobody needs to get in the middle of that. And nobody has a right to know either.
But it seems to me that, like, I'm not out saying, yeah, who's Palestinian? Let's bomb them.
But
I would like there to be peace between Israel and Palestine. I don't know enough about the history or the situation to make commentary on that specifically, but if support for Palestine is going to encourage people in U.S. cities to just randomly beat up Jewish people, I definitely don't support that, and anybody who does is supporting terrorism.
Well, speaking of that, BLM, a supposed spokesperson for BLM, and we know from past reporting on your show that there are many fake BLM organizations, so
Right.
unclear if this entity really speaks for, quote, the real BLM, but they're calling for solidarity with the Palestinians.
Right.
And specifically with Hamas, which is a terror organization.
Of course.
And so the
Well,
notion...
but sorry, if anybody who is, I mean, when I observe Black Lives Matter supporters here in New York City, a lot of them are also very aligned with LGBTQ interests.
How can they be that when Hamas treats LGBT?
Exactly.
Yeah.
They don't like them. They're not their allies.
They don't like them, and
They want to kill them.
They throw gay people off buildings.
Whereas in Israel, you're free to be LGBTQ if you want. As a matter of fact, Judaism, from a very young age, I was aware of rabbis who were gay and stuff, and it was welcomed in Judaism, or at least in Reform Judaism.
Right. Interesting. But so yeah, the Middle East is just a disaster zone. We have rockets flying into Tel Aviv. We have really open warfare in the Gaza Strip. We have rockets coming in now from Lebanon. We have talks that Hezbollah, another terrorist organization, is going to team. They're backed by Iran. Are going to team with Hamas and Fatah, which are Sunni-backed, to go against Israelis. And we have the Weisenheimers in the EU and elsewhere all putting pressure not on Palestinians at all, but on
Israel.
On Netanyahu.
Yeah.
And that's just one theater of conflict. We have the situation in China, in the South China Sea, where the Chinese Communist Party and military are sending many jets into Taiwanese airspace, threatening to do something about retaking or taking Taiwan.
Wow.
And also threatening shipping and challenging ownership claims of these islands across the South China Sea and around the South
Epstein
China
Island?
Oh.
China should invade Epstein Island.
Right, we have
Find all Bill Gates
in
used
Europe.
underwear.
In Europe, we have actually France and Germany have had enough of these swarms of Syrian refugees and others from the Middle East, and are now talking about changing what's called that Schengen rule, where if you enter the EU validly, you can go anywhere within the EU. Now they're threatening that and saying, no, can't go to France, can't go to Germany.
Oh, well, but I mean, they want open borders, Charles. That's why wouldn't you want to allow people to run rampant in your country? I mean, so we got open borders. We got people who are running up to restaurants asking, what's your religion, and beating you up if they don't like it. That doesn't sound like a good combination to me.
And then we've got towering debt, deficit spending, markets that are very, financial markets and capital markets that are very volatile. We have people still not fully back to work yet. And in this interim period, the only place, it's funny, I was trying to get information from one of the non-governmental organizations we may talk about a bit later, and I get the recording. Because of the pandemic, they closed. I call the city of Alexandria, Virginia for property records. Because of the pandemic, we're closed.
Right.
So across the unionized, high-paid, portions of government and in NGO world, we have a lot of people with cushy jobs who may ultimately never be fired, and whose costs go up year by year, especially given that we have inflation soaring up. You could expect public sector wages and cost of living adjustments to go up, whereas in the private sector, the capitalists are looking at this and saying, my goodness, we managed to survive and sell and do a lot in this period where nobody was in the office. Maybe that's a thing. Maybe we shouldn't have these offices here in high-cost places like New York City and California and other places. So maybe we should take our workforce of humans and cut it in half, and cut it down to 75%.
Well, and when you mention inflation, it causes me to think about rising gas prices,
Oh.
which reminded me that I just heard, in addition to shutting down the Canadian, I guess what it was, the Keystone Pipeline, and
Right.
that other one that got hacked or ransomware.
Colonial
or whatever.
pipeline. Colonial, yeah.
But then now President Stupid Joe has lifted some sanction on Russia, allowing them to build a pipeline. Why would he do that?
That's the Nord Stream pipeline. Yeah, that's the one. The original theory that operated back when I was in college, and people were concerned about Eurocommunism in the Soviet Union, the original reality actually was that Europe gets a disproportionate amount of its heating, its natural gas, from
Russia.
From Russia, specifically from Gazprom. And there have long been efforts to try to help the Europeans have an alternative source of supply, not necessarily American gas, but something other than.
Wasn't that something Qatar was trying to do? Or
Qatar was definitely trying to do that, and others were trying to get gas in there.
Many would argue that's the whole purpose of the war in Syria, to get Russia out of there with their gas and do some stuff with a pipeline.
Right. So the point here is that stupid dumb Joe. Remember, we have Hunter Biden in on the Burisma, which is a natural gas and energy
Right.
company in Ukraine.
Right.
Also important suppliers of natural gas into Europe.
Ooh, Tesla taxi, Charles.
Nice.
That's a very ADD thing for me to point out, but there we go.
And there we have the library across the way. I can't tell whether it's open, can you?
It is. They opened it today.
Is that right?
Wednesday or last week. I don't know. When they said that, I remember they said libraries would be open.
Let's see if it in fact is open. We'll be walking by it shortly.
Can we go in there?
No, not with a camera. Looks like it could be open. Normally it would have the revolving door open. No, it's not open.
Oh, it's not open. And the masks on the lions are gone. I've been watching a lot of videos of lions eating various prey, and then the prey fighting back.
So back then on the situation in Europe, we have the European Union, I think, continuing to disintegrate now that we have Brexit. Other nations are looking at this and saying, what the hell? What do we need this bullshit for? It's bureaucracy.
Are they? Who's doing that?
I think some of the smaller countries in the EU are saying enough of this.
But wouldn't the smaller countries want to be in the EU?
Depends. So like Hungary, Poland, no. Those are both countries that are actually embracing really Trumpian economic policies as opposed to Euro-socialism. And are blossoming. So they don't want any part of these. In Germany, you have, not only do you have a national federal bureaucracy, but you have regional bureaucracies, you have state bureaucracies, you have city bureaucracies, and now on top of that, you have the various European Union bureaucracies. I mean, it should tell you all you need to know that they decided in the EU to have two capitals.
What do you mean? I thought it's just in Brussels.
Strasbourg, well, they have one in Strasbourg, one center in Strasbourg, and one in Brussels.
Weird. It's weird.
No, it's just
I didn't know about the Strasbourg.
if your objective in government is to promote fine dining, catering services, hotels and fancy airports, you want to have as many capitals as possible. You want to tell everybody, hey, this meeting's going to be in Strasbourg, and at the last minute change it to Brussels, and then come up with a third opportunity. Of course, I'm making some of that up. That's this Chabad, is that how you pronounce it, of downtown, Midtown?
Chabad.
Chabad, okay.
You got to get that.
Chabad? Okay,
Yeah.
whatever.
And some people have pointed out some things about Chabad that are maybe, I don't know much about it at all, to tell you the truth.
But anyway, they normally have police protection.
Oh yeah, right. I would think that would be a place that there would be protesting at.
So here we are in the center of what once was a thriving city, 42nd Street, heading to 43rd on 5th. And again, there's much more foot traffic than we've seen in the past, with store after store out.
But this is still not a lot compared to normal.
Yeah.
Yeah, Yeah, see, that sign said Chabad Lubavitcher of Midtown. The Lubavitcher are the super religious guys who were doing something in Brooklyn. There was that guy who they thought was the Messiah or something, and then he died, or he was killed. I don't remember the details of that.
Are you the official historian for that?
Yeah, that was the detailed official history of this guy, and something happened.
Something happened.
I don't even know. Yeah. More moving trucks, Charles.
Exactly. Yeah.
I had a lot of stories in mind that I wanted to ask you about, but it's...
Well, let's talk a little bit, since we're talking about Europe. Mainstream media, and the Daily Mail in particular, are all over Bill Gates. And in the...
I guess Europe still hates him from that antitrust thing.
Well, how many reasons do we need to hate him?
Not many.
But I've been noticing that unlike investigations into the Clinton Foundation, the mainstream press now officially is all over this.
You also just reminded me, Letitia James announced she's investigating criminal investigation of the Trump Foundation, and I tweeted...
Not Trump Foundation, Trump Organization.
Trump Organization. But I tweeted, how can they justify investigating Trump and having not investigated the Clintons at all?
Yeah, but back at Gates just for a second. So I hadn't put it together in exactly this way, but the great writer Andrea Woodberg, who writes for American Thinker, I spoke to her for about an hour last week, and she had a piece where she pointed out that directly and indirectly, directly through the Gates Foundation and indirectly through Unitate and maybe other operations funded by the Gates Foundation, the Clinton Foundation's largest donor is really Bill Gates. Bill Gates and organizations heavily influenced by Bill Gates have given more than $700 million to fake.
So he's doing something with Unitate? I thought Unitate was France.
No, Unitate is a consortium of governments and the Gates Foundation, and it was put together as the brainchild of some folks in France with advice from Bill Clinton, and I think also from Gates certainly, and from likely Rajat Gupta, the disgraced felon who used to run McKinsey.
I got to tell you something, Charles. Unless you're trying to discern the finer points of cruising hookers in Little Rock, I don't think there's too much advice that Bill Clinton could give you that's worth anything.
Yeah. Well, so this story, remember the official story when Gates was still married to Melinda was, I saw Epstein, but it was nothing really.
Well, first he denied it.
Yeah, and then he, I did meet with him, but it was only in 2013 and only just a few meetings. And now, stories out there that Gates was turning to Jeffrey Epstein in 2013 for advice on how to deal with his loveless marriage. I mean,
more great advice,
right? I mean, that's like, I don't know. I don't want to get in too much trouble.
Yeah, I think we could have some funny conversation offline about what that's like.
Exactly. So he's doing that in 2013, and today's story in the Daily Mail is that Epstein introduced Gates, supposedly, to a Norwegian dude who was in Strasbourg, who was chairman of the Nobel Peace Prize Committee, or the Nobel Committee.
Oh.
And the allegation was that Epstein was going to help Bill Gates get Nobel Prizes. Now that's a Nobel Prize, but that's interesting because Epstein, separately in Norwegian reporting by our friends over there at Document, are reporting that there's something called the International Peace Institute, which is based here in New York, but is a charity heavily influenced by Norwegians with money from the Norwegian government and Gates. And one of the people involved with that was given a personal loan by Jeffrey Epstein. So I think, as I've been telling the audience, and I think you privately, and I'll tell people publicly, when you try to put yourself in the minds of what how these criminals think. It's a perversion of an analysis that this Lehman Brothers partner told me long ago, the famous so-called has-gets analysis. What do I has and what do I gets? Right. So if you have a lot of money and you want a Nobel Peace Prize,
you can get it.
You can get it if you figure out who makes the decision. And I think, especially looking back over the train wreck of Barack Obama's presidency, with with regard to foreign policy in particular, I think it is safe to say, and should be impossible to challenge, that Barack Obama did not get the Nobel Peace Prize based on merit.
Well, I'll tell you, Charles, when I was doing research for my defense in Steele v. Goodman, I called the Nobel Organization several times.
And you asked
in
for a Peace
Norway.
Prize?
No, I was trying to find records to verify Robert David Steele's claim that he had been nominated for a Nobel Peace Prize.
Right.
And I can tell you that that is an incredibly opaque organization,
Sure.
operated by a bunch of dopey Norwegian people who aren't very used to somebody nosy like me calling them up and asking all kinds of questions to which they had no good answers.
Right.
And there remains zero evidence that Robert David Steele was ever nominated for a Nobel Prize, but it was clear to me that this was an organization that perhaps wasn't as noble as
Right.
you might have presumed.
But if you're sitting there, you know, in the very beginning, because I had some experience, unfortunate experience with McKinsey having to fire them, you look at the constellation of characters that were involved in the project to rehabilitate Bill Clinton. You have now a felon, Rajat Gupta, the disgraced leader of the country, implicated in a lot of stolen and missing funds. We'll leave his name out of the equation. We have an outsourcing project which gutted the middle class, not simply in the United States, but around the advanced economies of the world. We have a passport that allows you to travel without really any intervention on the part of the police, that being the entourages of current and former leaders of different important nations. And you have this very interesting stew that you could cook, where you create an organization that sounds like it's noble. You get these you get these consultants involved, you get former presidents involved, you get crooks involved, and you trade contributions to the foundation for opportunities to get introductions to these influential leaders who then promote these business deals and also encourage their own governments to give this organization more grants that you then steal. So the money you put into the organization pales in comparison to the money that you could basically take out of the organization. And you know that the IRS has been gamed and the Department of Justice has been gamed. And you know that the state level organizations across this country do not, in the main, have the resources to investigate and prosecute these mammoth frauds. So you're in the fraud business. And the bigger the fraud, the more likely it is, actually, that nobody will ever get challenged for it.
Too big to fail.
Too big to detect.
Too big to be checked.
That's right.
And you've just reminded me of something else extremely exciting, Charles.
What's that?
Well, I had opportunity to speak with our new friend, Matt Schlapp, this morning.
Good. How'd that go?
I think it went well. I invited him to come on the show and to address these concerns, answer the questions. I mean, it's still possible that we could be incorrect, right?
No.
Oh, well, all right. I asked him to join us and point out what we might be missing.
I mean, it's possible that we could miss a fine nuance in a section of a report, but on the substance of whether these public filings are defective, we have not missed anything.
I know that, but I think if I invited him into the lion's den and told him he had to wear a meat suit, he might say no.
He's probably going to say no anyway.
He's probably going to say no. But I want him to have a fair opportunity to defend. I mean, we've made this accusation based on evidence.
What I will say is it's going to sound nice in the beginning, but I would caution anybody listening that you better do your diligence. To be fair to Matt, he only became chairman or chair of the American Conservative Union and of the American Conservative Union. Well, the American Conservative Union, he may be chair of the American Conservative Union Foundation. Those developments occurred around 2014 or thereabouts. So, on the one hand, you could say, well, stuff that happened in 1983 is not really all that important in 2014. You could say that.
Or, well,
You could say that. You could
You'd
lull
be wrong.
you could lull yourself into a false sense of security if you actually just said that. Now the problem with a lot of these people, and I'm not a lawyer either, so to the bottom of some of these legal issues. Problem with a lot of people who seem to be involved with the American Conservative Union and its foundation is that their primary business is politics. It's either being a political consultant, being a lobbyist,
Right.
being a candidate. This may well be a candidate for mayor here.
Oh. Huh.
I wonder who that is.
He's got a mask on. And today is the first day that you don't need masks.
No, but it's definitely somebody, it's not just an ordinary person here. I wonder who this guy is.
That is
anyone
an
from
extraordinary person.
Can somebody from the crowd? It's probably a Mexican, I mean a Hispanic American running for mayor or something.
That guy's got an owl on his shirt. No, not an owl.
An owl American. So getting back to this narrow question, Matt could basically say, look, everything that happened prior to my becoming the chair is something I had no control over.
That's true.
Well, not really, because he was on the board
Oh.
starting in around 2008
This
or
is why I
2009.
invited him to speak to you, because you know a lot more about it than I do.
Yeah, he was on the board 2008, 2009. And what I would encourage the Schlapp team to do, should they decide to come on the show, is I would encourage them to ask themselves the question: is the American Conservative Union Foundation, because that's the first thing we're going to talk about, is it technically an organization? And because only organizations can file 990s and seek exemption from federal taxes. And I will tell you that my answer is no. There's conclusive proof. I'm giving it. I feel like he's a busy guy and maybe he won't take the time to do this. But I would urge him to look, for example, off the top of my head, at the bylaws that are filed in New York State. The only bylaws for the American Conservative Union that are available on the New York State site so far are the amended version, amended on the 10th of February 2006. In the history section of those bylaws, it says that at the top of the bylaws it says not previously amended. Okay? In the history section it says they were adopted in 1983. Now it doesn't tell you what month, and I think there's a reason for that, but we'll save that for the debate, or for I think I know the reason.
He did email after the phone call. He asked that I send a proper email interview request, which I did, and he wrote back right away, and I think he CC'd the legal team or something, so I guess they're considering it.
Right, but let me just keep going if I may.
Yeah.
So the February 10th, 2006 bylaws are the First Amendment. And we know whatever bylaws may have been adopted in 1983 were not bylaws for the American Conservative Union Foundation, because that name wasn't used then. It was the John M. Ashbrook Educational Foundation. So if you don't amend your bylaws around March 2nd, 1987, when you change your name, that means that from whenever you changed your name, March 2nd, 1987, to February 9th, 2006, you are not an organization. And last I checked, that's a fuck of a long time. That's like 20 years.
So, but what is it if it's not an organization? Just like a club?
Well, the point is, at a high level, forgetting all the numerical errors and all the other errors, it is impossible for something that is not an organization to be tax exempt. An organization is a validly organized and operated association, trust, or corporation. There's no such thing here for 20 years. And once you fail one of these tests, that's it. You can't.
You're done.
You're done. So they fail the test for 20 years, not just a week, for 20 years. I mean, you turn a kid, you turn something that basically is just can't control basic functions into somebody who could fight in a war in 20 years, right? And so for that long period, these geniuses operated American Conservative Union Foundation with no bylaws. And then they discovered they had a problem. One of the reasons they had a problem actually with this is that from the inception, there were meetings beginning in as early as 1974 of the American Conservative Union, of the Conservative Political Action Conference, and all that, where there wasn't an actual formal organization, but that didn't stop President-elect Reagan from showing up and giving speeches, or George H.W. Bush,
Raising
or George
money and everything.
and all these people. So it's a lot like the situation you find yourself in with the Clinton Foundation later, where and its affiliates, where there's a big earthquake in Gujarat, India, and Bill Clinton gets together with Rajat Crook and says, let's set up the American India Foundation and start raising money, only they didn't set anything up, but they raised the money. And no one knows. Rajat claims that he raised $1 billion, but the filing for the first year of that operation says that the operation spent less than $100,000 in Gujarat, India.
Wow.
In that year.
What did they do with all the rest of the
What
money?
do you think? Right.
Kept it.
So, and the same is true with the tsunami, that HW and Bill went together and raised, no one knows exactly how much money to help the people who were victimized by the tsunami in 2004, early 2005. No formal accounting of that. No more formal accounting for Katrina, and their fundraising for both of those entities from the bully pulpit of George W. Bush's presidency. You know, he's having press conferences involving these different people, urging people to contribute in a public service announcement to an organization that doesn't exist. What? I'd say he's rather lightly dressed.
That's Borat's cousin.
Man, oh
That
man.
was
Go directly to
not
the loony
something that
bin.
you see every day.
Yeah, go directly to the loony bin. Yeah, the amazing thing is the guy probably woke up this morning and said, should I wear the off-green one or should I wear the purple one?
There's got to be some, I don't know what's going on with that.
You know, not much of the intellectual side.
Oh, well, wait a minute, Charles. Look at how they're taking away a lot of the, so we're very close to Trump Tower right now, right? Isn't it the
Block
next
away,
block?
yeah, let's walk up there.
So they've taken away the security that used to close down 55th Street.
56.
But didn't they have 56?
They had a little bit here, but it was more on 56. They still have the cement over there.
Ah, but they don't have that little police hut anymore.
So also just going through a little bit more as these folks prepare for their time with us, they might want to, the lawyer, we're not going to say his name, but the lawyer who may be associated with this, he's not a charity law expert.
I think that was the lawyer. He said he was going to contact the legal team or whatever because I
Right.
was asking him legal questions.
Right. So what people want to do if they're going to get into the den with us is they might want to check state laws and as to whether American Conservative Union Foundation needed to file truthful documents in states like New York, California, North Carolina, and when they made a declaration about the status of the foundation and something changed, like a fine happened, or a consent order happened, or a cease and desist order happened, or say somebody went to prison associated with this, and there are a lot of people who did. Those facts, those defects need to be disclosed very promptly. I think in some states it's within 10 business days of the occurrence.
Oh, wow.
And of course, none of this
Past
stuff,
that.
none of this stuff has been disclosed. And back on New York, there are multiple additional versions of the bylaws for the American Conservative Union Foundation that were amended after the 10th of February 2006, including lame attempts to make it seem. Oh, here's that guy. Make it seem.
Oh, the Trump. Yeah.
Make it seem that in the February 10th, 2006 version, the American Conservative Union is very much in control of the American Conservative Union Foundation.
President Trump, are you concerned about the criminal investigation Letitia James announced?
No, not at all. That's fine, but it's all a good thing. It's always a good thing.
All right, thanks,
Stay
President
cool.
Trump.
He's got to be hot under that thing.
Oh my God, the rubber mask.
So,
Fauci says you should wear a rubber mask.
the Trump mask. So just staying on this for a second, the entity in question that the supposedly American Conservative Foundation, Union Foundation, is what's called a public charity. It's a specific, under a specific set of regulations. It's a 509A1 and 170B1A6, which is a specific type of organization that has to be controlled by a board that is broadly representative of the public at large. It cannot be controlled by current and former members of the American Conservative Union, which is hardly representative of the general public. The American Conservative Union is a 501c4 in theory, assuming it is a legitimate organization about which there are questions. And it sure looks to me as if this 501c4 controls all aspects of a public charity, something that is not supposed to be possible. When you look at the precedents and the laws, the statutes, the regulations, and decisions to revoke the tax-exempt status of similar organizations that have tried these stunts in the past and failed. So the person, again, we're not going to give his name away, but the person who may be on point here is somebody, from my reading, who has a lot of experience lobbying with questionable people, has a lot of experience representing questionable clients, but has little experience, it would seem, being involved with a legitimate charity that is organized and operated to comply fully with any laws, regulations that apply inside and outside the United States. So it's going to be a tough challenge for these people, I think, to go through their record, and they better go well back, all the way back to 1983.
There's a roller, Charles.
Nice.
It seems like the type of thing that, it seems like the type of thing that he would be likely to decide not to do, but that would essentially be an admission that we're right.
Right. Well, either way,
We are.
and again on this, I would make this point, which is that it's not your responsibility or my responsibility to give a list of questions to these guys, and that's the end of it. We ask them some questions, and they choose which questions they want to answer, and they're only going to answer some of them. And if we miss a question or get something wrong, nothing wrong with all that. I have no responsibility to run, or to you, the American Conservative Union Foundation or union in any way. It's Matt who does, and his people who do, and they can claim that they're not getting a salary. It's Rolls-Royce City.
Rolls Royce Day.
Yeah, he can claim that he's not getting a salary, but that's the same dodge that Bill Clinton uses. But I'm not taking a salary for my good work at the Clinton Foundation. That's bullshit.
I'm surprised he would use a Dodge with all these Rolls Royces around.
So which way do you want to go, Jason?
I don't mind. Well, you want to check out Lincoln Center since we're right over here?
Lincoln Center is a bit far, but we could go that way.
I mean, isn't that
That's
Columbus Circle? Sorry, that's what I meant.
We could also go to like Newark if you want, but
nah, not Newark.
The question is, do you want to go
Circle.
into the park, or do you want to go along?
Yeah, let's go into the park.
All
I
right,
like going.
all right, let's go. So the Clinton dodge is, I didn't collect the salary, but it's a lot more valuable to get an office in Washington, D.C. that's very big with a secretary.
Now, wait a minute. You've just reminded me of something somebody else just said to us that seemed to be a defense against any kind of impropriety in the charity, which is, well, I'm not getting a salary.
Right.
And it's like, right, but it doesn't matter because you're already rich.
Well,
and there's a ton of other benefits that come from running that thing.
Well, again, the cost of the test in deciding whether you're getting what's called an annulment, an illegal private benefit, is not simply did you get cash money. It's did you derive any sort of advantage or edge, soft or hard, through the operation of the charity. And actually the test is not did you, Jason Goodman, did I, Charles Ortel, get that benefit, but over the life of the charity, was there a private benefit created over the life of the charity by all people associated with the charity that's, quote, more than insubstantial, which has been held to be an amount cumulatively less than $1,000. So when you think about things like picking on the National Rifle Association, and that moron Wayne LaPierre flying around the world trying to shoot animals,
Torturing elephants.
and traveling with a security detail, flying private, maybe having a fancy office down in wherever their headquarters is and elsewhere. All of these things are private advantages. I mean, you would look at comparable charities and you would say, what is the travel policy? In my mind, the travel policy of a charity should be, if it's a domestic travel,
Coach class.
coach class, absolutely.
Yeah.
Let's go.
What the hell is this? This is new.
I don't know.
It's like Georgia Guidestones at Central Park. Let's look at this a second.
I hope they didn't pay more than $6 for it.
Well, I've never seen this before. Have you?
Nope.
It looks like it moves.
Doors for Doris.
Oh, you know what this reminds me of is the, doesn't move, but the Cristo gates, remember that?
Yeah, I do. Cristo, yeah.
We did a 3D
Yeah,
production.
here it is. See?
Doors for Doris. It's a public art fund, Charles. Stone forms the foundation and framework of New York City. It's the bedrock that
Public
supports-
Art Fund founder Doris C. Friedman. I sincerely hope this did not cost more than $5.
I don't know. It came from quarries in Brazil, China, India, why not Russia, and South Africa. And then
I
they
think we're going to go way out of our
There's
way
bricks.
if we go up this way. I think we should go down because we got to walk
Sure.
home. Too. Where was I?
Well, so the foundation. And
Oh yeah, so you get like Chelsea Clinton, for example, doesn't take a salary, but the Clinton Foundation gives her a suite of offices,
Right.
chief of staff, lets her fly private, probably pays if she needs a publicist, pays for that, and shoulders a whole bunch of expenses when she travels, and that should all be disclosed in the filings, and it's not, of course, nor are the amounts paid. When you look at the travel budgets of the Clinton Foundation as an example, they're very, very high. And so, as we've talked in the past, there are all kinds of...
cute.
The dog or the bicycle? Or
Both. The attractive woman with a cute little dog in the basket of the bicycle.
I think we stay on the street.
Sure.
It's all right. So, when you think about the Clinton Foundation, to pick on one, and later NRA and others where there's a lot of travel, normally what you have is you have one travel vendor, one or two. And if you're operating Match Lab Consulting and American Conservative Union and another consulting firm and another communications firm, and you've got a crooked travel agent who's willing to play along, you can decide. If you've got clients who will happily pay extra for travel,
Right.
for the same travel city pair, you can charge the client that's willing to be soaked more, and let the client, another client, yeah, and you can also be unethical. You could charge 3 clients the same thing for a trip that ought to be 1/3, 1/3, 1/3. So there needs to be very close scrutiny.
Well, we also should bring up the point that this is one of the first things that Hillary Clinton did when Bill became the president.
Right.
She wanted to replace that guy who'd been the travel secretary since
Travel office,
LBJ with a private company that was owned by a friend of theirs, and that's
Bill's
when
cousin.
Travelgate came about.
Exactly.
There's one other thing I wanted to bring up about Wayne LaPierre. I know this is totally unrelated, but as I said, I've been watching a lot of wildlife videos for just, YouTube sending them to me, and elephants get pissed off, Charles. If an elephant sees a lion, like trying to kill a buffalo, it'll just kill the lion.
Is that like a whole metaphor there? Elephants are Republicans?
Oh, I don't know, but there was some video I was watching, which it's normally narrated by a British person, because that sounds
Always
much
sounds
more
better, yeah.
Like, this hyena goes straight for the liver, rich in vitamins. And it's like, how do they know? But the point is, the elephant, it's this British guy says the elephants despise the predators of the jungle,
Right.
and they'll just like step on a lion. So Wayne LaPierre would absolutely get skewered and beaten down by an elephant. That
Well-
video of him maiming the elephant is terrible.
If you think about it, that same video, if you were to pick on, say, somebody from Brooklyn, Italian American with a Brooklyn accent,
Yeah.
said the same thing, everybody in the audience would be disagreeing
Yeah.
with the guy. But the English guy says, oh yeah, it must
Sounds
be right.
good.
Yeah, it must be right.
Yeah. So Chelsea Clinton is doing stuff with travel. These guys have all kinds of elaborate ways of inuring themselves.
Right, and Steve Bannon, who got in trouble and is in trouble with that charity, Build a Wall Foundation, Trump pardoned him, but New York State appears to be going after him. The trouble here with these various and sundry charities is that, as Bannon said, that at CPAC, the place that you never went to and I will never go to, most likely, though you wanted to. It's tough to place a real true value, economic value, on the coveted speaking spots, which are the final day. Of course, you want to have the big kahuna. You have the speech at the Reagan dinner. You have various other speaking slots. Those are controlled. Those decisions in the past have been controlled by either Matt Schlapp himself or the chairman, or a committee heavily influenced by the chairman.
And you get to decide who's anointed. You can go from obscurity to national prominence just from one appearance there.
Well, and once you pick these politicians and out of obscurity and you give them a prominent speaking slot, they decide to run for election or re-election, they need money and they need a political consultant. And whether you're that consultant or a friend of yours is that consultant, you're creating currency. You're creating an advantage and an edge. And all of that is far outside the original charter, as I will explain in several weeks or months in the text that I'm writing. That is so far outside the original approved charter of the American Conservative Union Foundation, which was meant to be a forum for members of the general public, not people that Matt Schlapp or the chairman decides can go to it, the broadly defined general public, to discuss issues and appreciate issues that include the ideals of the founders as expressed in the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution, love for free market capitalism, love for the rule of law. It's all spelled out there. It wasn't supposed to be simply a forum for conservatives to decide who's the most conservative to run for president, senate, governor, house, or whatever in a certain place.
Well, who can lie about being the most conservative?
Right, that's not what this thing is supposed to be. And so, when you go back, that's why it's so important to go into the history and to maintain great records. I mean, if this were the Abbie Hoffman Burn Down the World Foundation, I would understand why there are no records. Abbie burned them down.
How do you like that ad, Charles?
Yeah. Gig worker can get $50,000. Amazing.
Wow.
Go for it. Woomply.
What
Maybe
the
you
hell
should
is that
apply
about?
for it. Maybe you should have applied for it.
How do you just get $50,000?
I don't know. Probably you get $50,000 out of a $500,000 loan that you're responsible for, and you have to give that
I'm
guy
not
for.
interested in anything like that.
Yeah.
I don't like that kind of stuff. God, what? I think the battery died on this. Yeah. Those huge, massive batteries. The thing turned off. Wait a minute now. See, I should have bought Sony batteries. These were some Chinese off-brand, but it's supposed to be twice the power of the other. I mean, look at how big these batteries are. This is like twice the size of the other ones.
So are we done? Or?
No. Let me see if I can. Wow. Well, now it's half. I don't know what's going on. Hopefully that'll work. Let's keep going.
Sure. So what will we?
It's not about who's the most conservative. Watch out for this.
Right. Yeah. So the point is, when we think about history, history is important. And I'm not going to call it herstory or personstory or whatever. History is important.
Themstory.
And evidence is important. And when you're talking about a public charity, you have to keep in your files. Again, you're the American Conservative Union. You keep copious notes. I changed my name from the John M. Ashbrook Educational Foundation to American Conservative Union Foundation, you damn well better have a resolution, a board minute saying you did that. And for all these people who were on the original board of the John M. Ashbrook Educational Foundation, many of them are lawyers. Somebody would be smart enough to say, look, if we're going to change our name in the articles, we've got to do the same thing in the bylaws, and we better make sure if we're changing the number of directors in the articles to a different number in the bylaws, we've got to conform. Those are called conforming changes.
Charles, I have been meeting lawyers who, to my surprise, are some of the dumbest and most dishonest people I'm aware of.
Right.
They know who they are.
So again, I mean, one thing, if you would expect this kind of a wreck in the Abby Hoffman Blow Up the World Foundation, but we see it here in these two operations. And then we discover, as you peel into the number of vanguards of the American Conservative Union going back into time, you discover that a large number of them are in the business of making money off the movement, whether as political consultants or as booksellers, as people operating at one point newspapers, now blogs or whatever they're called. Of people off again.
Okay. Well, that is so crazy to me. I just spent like $200 on these batteries, and they last less than. These are supposed to have 7,800 milliamp hours. The other ones are 4,900, and this is lasting for less time than any battery ever has.
Could it be a function of heat?
I think they're just crappy batteries somehow. So many batteries.
They're crapperies.
It's back now. I mean, we're just like sucking down the last little bits of juice. It's funny, I thought about bringing an additional battery. I guess maybe I'll return these. Anyway, yeah, I guess we should maybe. It's only been an hour. That's ridiculous. This is like the shortest, the skinniest batteries I have last longer than this. Oh well, anyway, sorry.
It's okay. So, should we plan that we might cut off again, or?
Yeah, it's gonna die pretty soon, I think. So that's annoying because people want a solid chunk of Charles Ortel style information. How you guys doing? These are the horse operators of Central Park.
The unique smell thereof.
It's really, I couldn't tolerate that.
Yeah.
Well, so Charles, when will we do another in-studio breakdown? I mean, we got to wait and see what Matt Schlapp says if he wants to engage in this conversation. He really owes it to anybody who is part of that American Conservative Union, anybody who's been to CPAC, anybody who's seen our shows and has these questions, and frankly, anybody who just donates money to that thing.
Well, and then I'd like to make a few points. The first is that they say that people who were conservative in college couldn't possibly have a heart. And, you know, fuck you for saying that, if you can believe it. I was chairman of the American Conservative, the Conservative Party at the Yale Political Union in 1975, in the beginning of my sophomore year. And it was a great experience. I had a lot of fun. I met a lot of people and took it probably too seriously. But I was a conservative then economically. I'm more conservative economically today in 2021 than I was in 1975. I'm probably more open-minded socially because I have kids and, you know, a long
time has gone on.
Yeah. But I am definitely, I would view myself as an authentic conservative, and I don't need anybody to tell me whether I am or not an authentic conservative. So I'm not looking at this from the standpoint of being anti-conservative and wanting to humiliate the conservative movement. Indeed, anybody who would defend the record, the public record, of the American Conservative Union Foundation, such as it exists in the American Conservative Union,
disservice.
Is not an authentic conservative.
Yeah.
Needs to be called out, needs to be punished. And I would be interested, not to be in an organization, I'm not looking to get paid by anybody. I would, as I did with Barack Obama's foundation, I would happily, if some new group of conservatives wants to come up and create a new organization to promote conservative ideals globally, not just in America, I would be delighted.
Help them understand how to do it legally.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not a lawyer, but I'd sit with their lawyers and I'd look at documents and I'd ask questions and try to help them for free. You know, so this is not a power grab for me. I'm not trying to run for office. It's not a money grab. I do care. I think conservative principles make abundant sense.
Hang on. Lost sound again. This is so inconvenient and terrible. I mean, the reason I got these batteries was so we could go for longer conversations. Let's see if we can just squeeze a little bit more juice out of these. So see, that's the interconnection between all this stuff. We get more battery output to charge the phone, and it kills the sound.
The headphones connected to the netphone.
Well, Charles, maybe there'll be an opportunity to help. Yeah, it's out of battery. Maybe there'll be an opportunity to help Matt Schlapp straighten out this CPAC and American Conservative Union.
I'd like to think so, but I'm dubious. Now, similarly, on the question of the NRA, I mean, the NRA is gone, really. It's
I think it might be a little bit too quiet to hear you now that the sound has gone. I think it might be time for us to
stop.
Yeah, we might have to just call this one a little bit early. Thanks for watching, everybody.
We'll put a lid on it.
We're going to put a lid on and call Joe Biden, and I'm going to figure out what's going on with these new batteries. Thanks to all the sponsors who help provide the batteries. People can go to subscribestar.com/crowdsourcethetruth or patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth. And I'll see everybody later. Thanks for watching.